31 and I own a lake house that I built with my own hands. Not metaphorically. I mean, I actually built it. Framed the walls myself. Poured the concrete for the foundation with my dad one summer when I was 24. We worked 4 weekends straight in July heat, and he kept saying, "You're going to thank yourself for this someday." He was right, but not in the way either of us expected. The lake house sits on about 3 acres in northern Minnesota, maybe 2 hours from the city. It's not a mansion. It's not some Pinterest renovation project. It's just solid wood, stone, a covered porch that faces west, so you get the full sunset over the water. I bought the land at 22 when everyone my age was spending money on cars and going out. I drove a 2009 Civic for 6 years. I ate lunch at my desk most days. I said no to a lot of things so I could say yes to that land. My dad helped me build the main structure. My mom picked out the kitchen tile. There are still marks on the doorframe of the back bedroom where she measured her height every time she visited, just joking around. She passed 2 years ago. Ovarian cancer, fast and unfair the way it always is. After that, the lake house stopped being just a place I owned. It became the last place that still felt like her. I still go up most weekends between May and October. I take the long way around the lake when I drive in because there's a stretch of road where the trees thin out and you can see the water through the pines. I never got tired of that view. Not once. So when my brother called me on a Tuesday night in March and said, "Hey, so Kira and I were thinking her parents could use your lake house for the summer," I didn't say anything for a long time. Not because I didn't understand what he was asking. Because I understood it perfectly. My brother's name is Nate. He's 28. He married Kira 2 years ago. And I like Kira fine. She's not the problem. Her parents, though, are a different story. Her father, from what I've seen, treats every space he enters like he owns it. He's the kind of man who rearranges furniture in other people's homes and then explains why his way is better. Her mother is quieter but follows his lead on everything. The 2 times I'd met them, once at the wedding and once at Christmas, I'd left both occasions with a headache. "The whole summer?" I said. "Yeah, like June through August. They're between places right now." Between places. I turned that over in my head for a second. Between places meant they had a situation they needed someone else to solve, and my brother had volunteered my lake house without mentioning it to me first. "Nate," I said, "you didn't ask me." "I'm asking now." "No," I said. "You're telling me now. There's a difference." He went quiet. Then he said, "Come on, you're not up there that much." That sentence hit differently than he probably meant it to. I'm not up there that much. Like the house was just sitting there waiting for someone to use it. Like the fact that I wasn't there every single day meant it was available for whoever needed it. Like my ownership of something was only valid if I was actively standing inside it. "Nate," I said again, "the answer is no." He didn't like that. His tone shifted the way it does when he decides he's going to press something. "They don't have anywhere to go right now. It's 3 months. You'd barely notice." I said no. "Why are you being like this?" I almost asked him to explain what "like this" meant. Instead, I just said I had to go and I'd talk to him later. I hung up and sat with it for a while. I wasn't angry exactly. It was more like that specific kind of tired that comes when someone you love treats you like an obstacle instead of a person. 2 days passed. Nate didn't call back. Kira texted me a long message about how much her parents were struggling and how much it would mean to the family. I read it twice and didn't respond. I didn't want to have the argument by text. On the 3rd day, Nate called again. "Look," he said, "I talked to Kira and we really need you to do this. They're family." I noticed the word, family. Not my family, just family. Like that word alone was supposed to override every other consideration. "They're your in-laws," I said. "I met them twice." "That's because you never make an effort." I let that sit. That was a different kind of sentence, the kind that isn't really about the lake house at all. That was the version of the conversation where I was suddenly the problem, where saying no to something unreasonable becomes evidence of some character flaw he'd apparently been keeping notes on. "Nate," I said, "I'm not doing it." "Fine," he said, and his voice went flat. "Then don't come to the 4th of July thing. Kira's family will be there, and it'll be weird." I almost laughed. I wasn't sure if he meant that as a threat or just an awkward way of managing the situation. But either way, I said okay, and we hung up again. Here's the thing about being told to stay away from a family gathering because you wouldn't give someone your house. It's clarifying. Not painful exactly, just clarifying. It shows you exactly what category you've been placed in. I didn't call Nate back. I didn't argue. I didn't send a long text explaining myself. I just started thinking, quietly and carefully, about what actually needed to happen here. Because I'd said no, clearly, twice, and the response was social pressure, emotional leverage, and exclusion. Which meant no wasn't going to be enough on its own. I drove up to the lake house that weekend. I spent 2 days going through everything. I moved my mother's things from the back bedroom into a locked storage unit on the property that only I have access to. Her photo albums. The quilt she'd been working on when she got sick. A few pieces of jewelry she left in the nightstand, not because I thought anything would definitely happen to them, but because I wasn't willing to find out. Then I called a locksmith I'd used before and had him rekey every exterior lock. New keys, new codes on the keypad entry, new padlock on the storage shed. I also called the property management company I use for occasional maintenance and told them under no circumstances was anyone to be given access to the property without my direct written authorization. I had them put a note in the file. I didn't tell Nate any of this. Then I waited. June came. I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks and I started to think maybe Nate had let it go. Maybe they'd figured something else out. I went up to the lake house the second weekend of June and spent 3 days fishing and not thinking about any of it, and it was good. The kind of good that happens when you've protected something instead of just hoping for the best. On June 19th, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. Is this the owner of the property on Lakeview Road? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Yes, I said. Hi, I'm Kira's mother. We're at the house right now and the keys aren't working. I leaned back in my chair. I had been expecting Nate. I had not expected to be fielding a call from a woman I'd met twice, standing outside my house with luggage, apparently having decided the whole thing was settled. I'm sorry, I said, and I kept my voice completely even. You're at my house? Yes, Nate said it was fine. Nate doesn't own this house, I said. I do. And I told him no. Silence. Then carefully, there must have been some miscommunication. There wasn't, I said. The locks were changed. The property is not available. I'm sorry you made the trip. She started to say something else. I could hear her husband in the background, voice rising. She put me on hold for a moment and then came back. Can we speak to Nate? Sure, I said. His number hasn't changed. I hung up. Nate called me 11 minutes later. I know, because I looked at the time when his name appeared on the screen. 11 minutes from when his mother-in-law got off the phone with me. I let it ring through to voicemail. He called again. I let that one go too. The third time, I answered. What did you do? He said. Not a question. I changed the locks on my house, I said. They're standing outside with their bags. It's 80 degrees. I know. I told you no, Nate. You told them to go anyway. I thought you'd come around. I want to pause on that sentence because it's the one that matters. I thought you'd come around, which means he never actually believed no. He thought no was a starting position. He thought if enough pressure was applied, the guilt trip, the family angle, the social exclusion, I would eventually fold. He'd counted on it. I didn't come around, I said. This is embarrassing for Kira. I imagine it is, I said. She shouldn't have been put in that position. You put her in that position. No, I said. You did. When you promised them something that wasn't yours to promise. He went quiet. I could hear activity in the background, a car door, someone talking. Then he came back, lower this time. Can't you just let them stay? 1 month? I'll owe you. You already owe me, I said. The answer is still no. What do you want me to tell them? Tell them I said no 3 months ago and it hasn't changed. He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after that. Not triumphant. Not guilty either. Just very clear. Kira's parents drove back to the city that afternoon. Nate didn't speak to me for 12 days. Kira sent one more text, shorter than the first one, that just said she hoped we could move past this. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. On day 13, Nate called. I answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Long pause. I didn't fill it. I've learned that the person who fills silence first usually ends up doing the work the other person should have done. "I shouldn't have told them they could go," he said finally. I didn't say anything. "I thought you were just being stubborn. I didn't think you'd actually." He stopped. "I didn't think it through." "You put me in a position where no didn't mean anything," I said. "You kept pushing after I'd already answered, and then you had them show up at my house anyway." "I know. That's not a small thing, Nate." "I know," he said again. I believed him. Not because the apology was some elaborate, well-crafted thing. Because it wasn't. It was flat and a little uncomfortable, like he wasn't used to being on this side of a conversation. That's usually when people mean it. "Kira's parents are dealing with some real stuff," he said. "Financially. I was trying to help her." "I get that," I said. And I did. I understand loyalty to a spouse. I understand wanting to solve something for someone you love. But you can't solve her problems with my property. That's not how it works. "Yeah." Another pause. "I don't actually know why I thought it would be fine." "Because I usually let things go," I said. "That's why." He didn't argue with that. We talked for about 20 minutes after that. Not about the house. Just talked. At some point it stopped being a repair conversation and became a regular one. That shift meant something. But I want to be clear about one thing, because I've thought about it a lot since then. Changing those locks was not cruelty. It was not me being difficult or stubborn or whatever word Nate used when he was frustrated. It was the only response that matched what was actually happening. I'd said no. It had been ignored. Every soft version of no had been dismissed, negotiated around, pressured away. The only thing they understood was a door that wouldn't open. And here's the part I didn't expect. 2 weeks after that phone call, I drove up to the lake house for a long weekend. Same road, same turn, same pines thinning out to show me the water. I walked in, and it was exactly as I'd left it. Nothing moved. Nothing missing. My mom's measurements still on the doorframe. The quilt still locked away safe. I stood in the kitchen for a long time that evening and thought about how close I'd been to letting someone else's certainty override my own. Nate had been so sure I'd fold. Kira's parents had driven 4 hours and shown up with luggage. They'd all made plans around my silence, around the version of me that usually just absorbs things and moves on. I think that's what it actually was in the end. Not a fight over a house. A recalibration. A moment where everyone involved had to adjust their picture of who I was and what I was willing to let happen. Some people mistake patience for weakness. They see someone who keeps quiet and doesn't push back, and they read it as permission. They think the absence of argument means agreement. They plan around it. What they don't see is that patient people, when they finally do draw a line, don't move it. I still go up on weekends. Still take the long way in. The porch still faces west. The sunsets are still the same, and the locks are still mine. I've thought a lot about what actually happened that summer, not just the surface of it. The locked door. The 4-hour drive Kira's parents made for nothing. The 12 days of silence from Nate. But the thing underneath all of it. The part that took me a while to name. When Nate told them they could go, he wasn't being malicious. I genuinely believe that. He wasn't trying to take something from me. He was trying to solve a problem for someone he loved, and he reached for the easiest tool available, which happened to be mine. That's not cruelty. That's something more ordinary and in some ways harder to confront. It's what happens when someone has never had to think carefully about where their generosity ends and someone else's ownership begins. But here's the thing about cause and effect. It doesn't care about intentions. It just runs. Nate made a promise he had no right to make, and the consequence of that was a door that didn't open. That's not punishment. That's just what happens when you build a plan on a foundation that doesn't belong to you. I think about that a lot now when I'm at the lake house. How close I came to just letting it happen. How easy it would have been to say, fine, 3 months, whatever. I almost did, honestly. The version of me from 2 years ago probably would have. I would have swallowed the discomfort, told myself it was the kind thing to do, and then spent the whole summer angry at myself for not saying what I actually meant. What changed, I think, is that losing my mom made certain things very clear, very fast. The lake house isn't just property. It's the last physical place where she still exists in any real way. Her measurements on the door frame. The kitchen she helped me choose. The quilt I locked away before any of this started. Not because I thought Kira's parents were bad people, but because some things you protect before they're in danger, not after. That's the part nobody tells you about standing your ground. It doesn't feel powerful in the moment. It feels uncomfortable and a little lonely, and you spend some time wondering if you're the one being unreasonable. What I've learned is that feeling is normal. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're doing something that matters to you enough to be difficult about it. Nate and I are fine now. Better than fine, actually. I think he respects me differently than he did before. Not because I made things hard for him, but because he saw that I meant what I said. There's something that shifts in a relationship when the other person realizes you're not just going to absorb everything indefinitely. It's uncomfortable at first. Then it becomes something more like honesty. The locks are still mine. The house is still standing, and I still take the long way in every time, just to see the water through the pines. Some things are worth the difficulty of protecting them.